Hey guys, Milton Cable with the Bow-1.flv.com. I just want to do a little video. There's several on YouTube about building a primitive bow, making a bow out of a board or a stave. But this can be seemed to be such a daunting process to some people. I thought the more the better. So it's really fun. Don't be afraid. You may mess up one or two. I have. And I still mess one up every now and then. It's a piece of wood. You never know what's going on in the middle of this stuff. It's a piece of nature. So don't be concerned if one breaks on you. Just keep plugging and do it again. So there's basically two different kinds of self bows. That's what I build, is self bows or wood stick bows, primitive archery bows. One is made out of a stave, which is a split long ways piece of the other style bow is made from a board that you can buy at your lumber yard. This is some oak boards. This is a piece of red oak, although it's rather light colored. But the main thing about picking out a board bow is picking out your wood. Now, I want you to look at the end of this. You can see these growth rings. You see how thick these growth rings are. The summer wood, or the early wood, is the porous growth rings right here that you can see the holes in. And in between the porous rows, you'll see that harder, dense growth ring. Now, you see how thick this is. This is my finger. Now you'll look at your hardware store, your lumber yard, you'll see a lot of boards and see different size growth rings. What you want is the big, thick growth ring like this if you can get it. It doesn't have to be this thick. This is really nice here. But as long as in proportion, the late, dense wood is much greater than the early, soft wood. But you want as thick as you can. Now look down the edge of this also. I believe you can see how these growth rings follow and stay on the board. Get that if you can. Some people say that you can have one or maybe two runoffs. I do not like that. I just don't trust it very much. But you can do it. I have a couple bows still now for sale that have a couple. Now I shoot every bow I make at least 200 times before I'm satisfied that they're going to hold up and before I turn it over. The first thing I do is I'll lay out a center line. Now that's what this line is that you can see drawn on this board, is the center line, what is going to be my bow. Now what I want to build is a pyramid style bow. If you've seen any of my other videos, my all-time favorite bow is this pyramid style. The tips are so small and so light that it shoots very, very fast. My favorite style bow, I believe, is the best shooting, the fastest shooting primitive style bow there is. Now, I like these bows to be about 62 inches long from tip to tip. So I'm going to mark my 62 inches. I like laying this whole bow out. I think that's one of the most important things. Lay it out, measure it again, make sure that it is what you want. Now, I need half of that. I need the center line going this way. So there's my 31 inches. That's the center of the bow. Exact center of where my bow is going to be. Now, I like the handle piece to be at least 4.5 inches. Fits most people's hands, I believe. So I want to lay out 2 1/4 on the center line, 0 to 4.5. So there's my handle piece. Now, my riser, from the widest spot to the widest spot, is 8 inches. These are just dimensions I've come up with. Other people's opinions that I've learned from, they just work. So you can deviate from them. I have, and it seems to work just fine as long as you've got a good piece of wood. There's my 8 inches from edge of my what we call the riser. So my riser wants to be 2 inches wide at the widest spot. So I'm going to mark 1 inch on either side of the center line at that spot. My handle piece wants to be 1 inch wide, just another dimension that works out well. Leave yourself a little room for sanding and finishing and shaping. So there's my handle piece. Sometimes I'll go through 3 pencils before I get one bow laid out. So from here on, it's just connect the dots, draw your bow. Here, I give myself plenty of working room, plenty of sanding room and shaping room. So I like for this to end up down here where I start, when I start, to be 5/8 wide total. Then we end up with our whole bow laid out. I've avoided the knots. This is the belly of the bow. The back of the bow, that knot doesn't exist. This pin knot doesn't exist on the back of the bow. It goes through, and I'm going to miss it. So I actually align my layout where I miss any little knots, any pin knots, anything like that on the back of my bow. So the next step that I do is I take this to the bandsaw. The next thing I do is I go to the bandsaw and I cut me out a piece of handle. This happens to be black walnut. This is oak. So when they're finished, there's going to be a contrasting color, real pretty contrasting color. Now once I have this cut out, all these drawn lines cut out on the bandsaw, I'll have essentially this. Right, the belly of the bow, I take this down to just a little over a 1/2 inch, because the finished bow comes in just a little under a 1/2 inch. So that gives me plenty of wood to work when I'm tillering the bow or making the bow bend properly throughout its full length, so there's no strong spots and no weak spots. That's what tillering's all about, is to make the entire limb of the bow share the bending, share the responsibility, so one point's not stressed too much and other points are stressed little. So I take this piece and position it on the cutout piece, glue it. Every piece of it is covered with glue. I clamp it down with 4 or 5 good C-clamps, let it set overnight, and then you have this. Now this will also keep the handle piece from bending when the bow works, because it's strengthening it, so this is not going to bend. You may feel a little flex in it sometimes, but it's going to keep it stiff and keep the working part of the bow the limb. Now from this point, it's sanding. Mainly what I use is a big belt sander. That'll be on the next part of the video. I can't get it all on this one, and there may be another one after that for the fine tillering, because I'm just a little picky about that. Everything needs to be bent just right. So that's the first process. My dimensions normally are 62 inches wide. My handle piece is 4 inches. The total riser is 8 inches. 2 inches wide at the widest spot, tapering down to 5/8 wide at the tip. Final tillering will make this bow smaller. You can see how much smaller it's going to be by comparing the layout to a finished bow. With the next video, keep looking for it, and we'll see if we can't help you through the process of learning how to build your own bow.